And turning now to developing news in the war in Ukraine, former Vice President Mike Pence making a surprise trip to the war-torn country, offering support to President Zelensky. Now, it comes amid reports of two top Russian generals missing in action. NewsNation Washington correspondent Joe Khalil has the latest on Pence's visit and the new reports about what may have happened to those generals. Joe?
Yeah, Kelly, quite a bit of news today on the Ukrainian war front with Russia. And we are going to start with Vice President Pence making that surprise unannounced visit into Ukraine to meet with President Zelensky, someone Pence has supported since the beginning of this conflict. Pence reportedly was there to talk about a couple of things, but one of the bigger ones was human rights violations, Russia abducting Ukrainian children as a way to dent the Ukrainian resolve. He was there with a group that advocates for human rights abuse victims. So that in itself is certainly significant. Mike Pence is not one of these Republicans, and there are a lot of them, whose support for Ukraine has really waned over the last couple of months. Many Republicans say that we should not be giving as many weapons, as much money and funding to Ukraine. Pence, not one of those. He's a very ardent and fervent supporter of the Ukrainian war effort. And this is how he described his conversations with President Zelensky.
I assured him that for my part, we'll continue to do everything in our power to make sure that we provide the Ukrainian military with the support they need until they repel the Russian invasion and restore the sovereignty of this country.
Now, the other big story coming out of that region right now, two Russian generals who are believed or rumored to have supported in some way this rebellion effort from the Wagner group over the weekend, they are now missing. And we're not talking about low-profile people. These are very high-profile generals here. We're talking about Army General Sergei Surovikin and Armed Forces Chief of Staff General Valery Gerasimov. They have not been seen or heard from in days. Now, there was some speculation that the first man we talked about, General Surovikin, may have had advanced knowledge of the Wagner Group's plan to advance on Moscow. The Wagner Group leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, recently praised Surovikin. Now, Russian bloggers have been reporting on rumors that Surovikin may have been arrested, may have been detained by Russia. So far, we don't have any confirmation of that. The second general we're talking about, Gerasimov, in his case, he has not done any TV appearances in days. He's actually one of the higher echelon Russian commanders calling the shots in Ukraine, and one of three people who reportedly has control of Russia's nuclear briefcase. Now, when asked about this at a press conference today, Kremlin officials had no comment on either one of these men, so dubious there. And we're waiting at 2:30 Eastern time for a Pentagon briefing to see if they address these two generals. But so far, we haven't heard a lot other than speculation. What is known is that these two men, who are visible figures, have been nowhere in sight over the last couple of days, Kelly.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.